Hey, it's John and Mike, brew-foods.com, and this is the final Jar of Destiny tasting video of 2023. This was Mike's pick back in, what was that, October or September when we did it. It was the 8th pick, and he chose 21B. It's the specialty IPA category, but this one was specifically the Belgian IPA.
Belgian IPA. Of
Yes.
all the IPAs,
That's the one to pick.
That's the one to get. Yeah.
All right. Well, I can't wait to learn more about this style.
Dig into that because
Okay.
it's complex. It's a complex beer. It's a complex style. Let me give you the quick rundown of the recipe. So this is a 3.5 gallon batch, 3.5 gallons in the fermenter.
Boom.
So brewed on the Brewzilla system. So this is about almost 76% Dingemans Belgian Pilsner. That's about 7 pounds. It's 8% aromatic malt from Dingemans as well, which is about 20 love. That's 12 ounces. It's just about 5% of carafoam. So Pilsner, aromatic carafoam. And then 10%, the remaining 10% of this is table sugar.
Hey.
Because that's what you got to do
Yeah,
in the
right.
Belgian world to get that gravity up, but to be able to dry it out as much as you can.
True that.
So this is a Belgian IPA. So the for the hopping here, so I really had to sort of think how I wanted to do this.
Yeah.
Okay. And we'll get into it. But let me just give it to you. So I first wort hopped with half an ounce or 14 grams of Cascade and another half an ounce, 14 grams of Sterling. And then, so that was for a full 60 minutes. Well, that was like first wort hopping, so 60 minutes. And then with 5 minutes left to go, I did another half ounce of Sterling, another half ounce of Cascade, and 2 full ounces of El Dorado
Hey. Okay.
to try to mix it up. The yeast that I used to ferment this was Lallemand's Abbaye style ale yeast. So I've never brewed with this one before, but we'll talk about that too. I mashed this for 60 minutes at 154, ramped up to a 168 mash out. I wasn't really working too hard at becoming super attenuative because I knew I had all that table sugar in there. So I wasn't really too worried about doing like a 45 or something, 145 in there. The original gravity on this baby, it started off at 1066. I missed my target of 1072 by a couple points, but who cares? Fermented down to 1015 for almost 7% alcohol, 6.96. So 7% ABV, which is right in the wheelhouse where I want it to be. When I was designing this recipe, for me, the gold standard for Belgian IPA, when I do have it, is from the Chouf brewery.
Okay.
And they make Le Chouf Blonde Ale, which is absolutely excellent.
Yeah,
I love that beer. But they make Chouf Hoblen, or Hoblen Chouf. And in that one, I think, if I remember right, they use Tomahawk, Satz, and Amarillo. So I sort of went with that idea of, something European and the Satz with something sort of Sterling-ish and give me a little bit of that noble character. And then a blend of like something old school, right? Like Cascade. And then something a little bit more new in the case of the Hoblen Amarillo in terms of when that beer first came out, that was relatively new. And for me, El Dorado.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to maximize spicy hops, classic bitterness hops, and something new fruity-wise to just throw it all together and see what we get. In a Belgian IPA, there should be a distinct hop-forward character to it, but there should also be, it is a Belgian IPA, so the Belgian yeast should sing through and do some of the lifting for you as well. I think the real challenge is trying to find a balance between having yeast character and having
Hop character. True that.
So I'm going to take a couple more sips.
Yeah, you do that. So as you were speaking, I was actually trying to warm it up too because I'm really trying. It's powerful yeast flavors and aromas.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to find the hops. The hops are there. I just think with maybe a little bit temperature raising here, it might help it out a bit. But right off the nose, man, without telling me anything more about the beer, I'd be like, okay, well, certainly a Belgian strain has been used. Lots of fruity aromas there. I mean, like just I don't know, just an overwhelming, maybe a little bubble gum, you know, just an overwhelming, you know, Belgian characteristic in the aroma from the yeast, right?
I get almost like a wit beer
Yeah.
aroma out of it, you know, yeast wise.
And then in the taste, I'm getting that same kind of fruity, almost bubblegum flavor is there, along with it's really kind of just a strong bitterness. I'm trying to pull out some El Dorado there, but I think it's mostly that's the sterling that you got there. It's like I'm getting like more of an earthy UK based hop flavor, right? That's really what's coming out for me. I was trying to like see if there's any Cascade characteristics or any
I can't find the Cascade in there at all.
No. Finish is dry. I mean, I think the cane sugar helps out there. It's pretty enjoyable. It hits you like a big sack of bricks when I first tasted it. I was like, wow, this is definitely, my palate had to get used to it. But once it settles in, it's pretty enjoyable. Kind of really digging all the yeast-derived flavors off of that, even as it sort of warming up with my hands.
Yeah,
it's getting more of it, and then now I'm feeling more of the harmony of the hop flavors with the yeast, just the esters and things like that. So, in terms of color, I was looking up. It's like kind of, you know, the range they gave is a light golden to amber.
Yep.
And I think it's sort of like, it's funny, it's kind of gradiated.
Yeah.
Later on the bottom, a little darker on the top. Maybe
Yeah.
that's just my eyes tricking me, but it's just the cloudiness of it too.
Yeah. It's still relatively young in the keg. It'll clear up in some time, I think, for sure. I didn't intend for it to look like a hazy IPA, but it's whatever.
The body's nice and medium, and yeah.
I think the drinkability is actually pretty high for me, at least.
Yeah.
This is not a style. I mean, Belgian beers in general, I like Belgian beers, but I don't really seek them out as much as we used to. I find, complexity in other places now. But
Sure.
I just sort of view this brewing Belgian ales in general, I just sort of feel like it's something old world, right? I mean, just these Belgian beers have been around for such a long time, and they represent a very different place in the canon of craft beer. Really, it's just beer brewing. It can't even be called craft beer because it's OG.
Yeah,
it's right.
yeah.
So, but the one word that you really said, which I think for me in Belgian beers rings out, and this applies to Hobelen Schoof as well.
I was going to ask you
is
about that.
really harmony and marriage, right? So I almost don't think I could have picked any combination of hops that would have been like, whoa, I'm really getting a Simcoe or something, right? Because
Yeah.
I just think that the Belgian style of the yeast and whatever, it sort of creates a singular symphony that if the more you sip it and the more you work at it, you can pick apart each individual part of the symphony. But in general, if you're just consuming it, it is a thing that all comes together.
Yeah.
These Belgian style beers, I get a lot of sort of like a candied fruit, and then that what we would call that funky, spicy phenol character from the yeast as a contrast to it. I just find that I forget about that in Belgian beers. I find that to be incredibly refreshing and an incredible contrasting point,
Sure.
especially when you're going to use fruity hops,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And getting definitely some fruity esters from the yeast as well. But you've got that other piece, that black pepper sometimes, that earthiness, that funk quality, that phenol quality as a counterpoint. I mean, if you're trying to learn what counterpoint means in beer ingredients, Belgian beer is the place to get it. I think, right?
I think I think it's very apparent for sure, and it's that spectrum that you've laid out with the candy fruit and that the phenolic qualities of it. Pepper versus like candy fruit.
Yeah.
I think if you're looking at the wheel of flavor, that's probably two different ends of it. I wanted to ask you, how do you think this compares to your flavor memory of the commercial version of it.
This is a little different, meaning it's a little less refined. It's still probably got some aging and mellowing to do together. Yep. But I think maybe if I had used a genuine like noble hop in there to really get those, I just didn't want to make a clone. I wanted to just see if I could take the same threads and do something like this, right? I haven't dry hopped it. I mean, because I just wasn't sure what it was going to be like. You know, I mean, I loaded it up at the 5 minutes to go. So, and I chill really fast. So, but anyway, yeah, it's similar, but it's definitely it could probably. I know that Lallemand has a distinct hop bitterness to it. This doesn't really drive home a tremendous amount of bitterness for a first pass. When was the last time I brewed like a bitter beer? I don't even remember how to make bitter beer. So, but that's why I went with the first wort hopping too. I was really wanting to sort of make sure I had enough IBUs in there, but I wanted to see how the yeast was gonna. I think too, like Belgian style yeast are OG for biotransformation too, right? I mean, so there's definitely some character to Sterling, El Dorado, and Cascade that have sort of mutated into a new flavor. So I think that's what's going on here. Because I know that in that Lallemand, that Amarillo and the Tomahawk and the Sods, I mean, it all comes together. And there's a little bit of that orange peel, right? But it's more, you get more of that noble character than you do here.
And then a question about the yeast. You wanted to talk about that Abbaye style yeast.
Yeah, I've never used this before, and I did a little research. I was trying to figure out what's the closest like brewery proximity to this, but on the Lallemand website and also just some other homebrewing websites, it just talks about Abbaye Ale yeast being great for wit beers to Abbaye beers to Trappist, all in general. And I think dry yeast does tend to try to advertise themselves as a very broad spectrum for most styles.
Things,
but you know what? I would love to try to brew like a Golden Strong or something with this yeast. This yeast is extremely aromatically present in this beer. I mean, it's almost overriding it. I wouldn't change the yeast now. No, I wouldn't change the yeast because I like what it's done with the beer. I like the attenuation and I like how fast it fermented. I would just come in with more hop character to try to just battle out that yeast a little bit, right? I wouldn't change the yeast strain at all. I did ferment this a little warm. I was pushing like, when it got going at about 68, I quickly pushed it up to about 72 just because I wanted to ferment relatively quickly for time reasons, but also I wanted there to be yeast character.
Sure. Well,
so I wanted to really just let it run. So
got it.
You know.
Cool. All right. Excellent. All right.
Cool.
Nice.
Jar of Destiny.
Hey. Jar of Destiny.
Delivers.
You know? We got to learn some stuff that certainly would never have brewed a Belgian IPA out of my own,
that category
choice.
of all those other IPAs just isn't normally anywhere near my radar.
Right. Yeah, it's usually just one type of IPA being New England at this point. So interesting, yeah. And again, all of those specialty IPAs, it's like, let's take this style that has a very distinct, strong flavor component and then just throw a whole bunch of hops on top of it and see what happens, you know?
Yeah, I think, though, for me, if you compare white IPA, Belgian IPA, black IPA, red, all those IPAs together, Belgian IPA, to me, has always been the most legit. Just because it really, there's a point there. There's a point to it. The other ones are just American IPAs with different color profiles and malt profiles. But in this case, you're actually switching up that yeast pretty hardcore, and you're really trying to go someplace new with it. And, the Belgian versions of this are excellent because of that long-standing tradition, how those Belgian yeasts work.
Got it. Cool. Well, thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. And thanks for closing out the Jar of Destiny for 2023. Can't believe we've been doing this for a couple of years now. Maybe we should continue on for a third year. Maybe. If you like this style of beer and have experience brewing it, leave some comments below this video. If you like what this video has to say, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel because we do this kind of thing every single week. For John and Mike, brew-dudes.com, brew on.
Cheers.